Thank you all, ladies and gentlemen, and of course to our distinguished guests. Thank you for joining us this year at the CWG Texcellence Conference 2023. As I was preparing for this program, I was excited. I was looking forward to it to share some of my new studies and knowledge in AI and the application of AI in how they're going to transform a lot of things that we do, how they're going to become a major driver in emerging economy. However, in that excitement, my assistant walked into my office and reminded me that the financial controller of the organization and the head of treasury were still waiting to see me. So I invited them in, and we ended up talking about how certain millions USD obligation will be due in 1 month, and why we need to take a position immediately because of the FX situation. But I concluded with one thing, which is the fact that we must produce to be able to earn. Like we've experienced also in other verticals of our economy, where we've had more consumptions than production. For any economy to be considered as a big economy, your consumption and your production must be quite substantial. Consumption also indicates a higher disposable income and a higher propensity to spend. So the problem, however, is not so much about the consumption. The problem is the composition of the consumption itself, which is how do you source the majority of what you're consuming? Is it sourced from a domestic market or is sourced through importation? I say with our new appetite for technology in this region, we must not repeat the same consumption mindset in this new phase of new tech. I think also it's important that we start to think about how do we export some of this digital technology beyond our current domain today. And I often say it doesn't have to be perfect before we start to think of exportation. And to better illustrate this as I begin to close is to talk about one of my very passionate conversations, which is the economic drivers of every nation. So let me bring this closer a little bit. So every business today, every organization or every nation has what you call the business or the organizational driver. And I've spoken in the past about how understanding the drivers of your business or how understanding the drivers of any economy can help to bring substantial growth within that entity. If we must enhance the economic outlook and broaden our horizon, especially in these challenging times, we must focus on the other key drivers that can help to enhance our economy. One such driver is what I call the international trade. I say engaging in global trade as we know it necessitates producing goods and services with an eye towards exportation. This surely opens up new avenues for economic growth and prosperity. So in Nigeria, as an economic driver, we must leverage technology trade to enhance economic progress. We must emphasize SME as a national strategy plan. Of course, evidence strongly suggests and support the notion that SME development is very critical and a potent force for economic growth. I say we must build with a purpose to export, and we must create platforms to harvest them. If we must use trade as a catalyst for economic development, we need to foster the creation and the success of new tech enterprise. The number of people in terms of our population and the number of startups we have in Nigeria today, there's a mismatch. And you could check that with similar economies that we have around the world that has used trade as some sort of international trade to improve their economy. We must have more startups. There must be targeted policy for growth. We must build for the purpose to export. We must have more collaboration. There must be more co-creation within key players. We must join hands with government, educational institutions, and international tech communities to be able to deploy cutting-edge technology to address some of these challenges and open up to new opportunities. Government also must support with the right policies, and I'm glad some of the regulators are here with us today. Finally, we must prioritize technology deployment. We must prioritize technology localization as a strategic move to enhance various sectors of our economy. If we must make remarkable progress, then we have to be deliberate. If we check what we've done within the payment space and the payment fintech space in Nigeria today, take 1 second to think about that same effort going into digital healthcare. Take the amount of effort that we've made today within the payment ecosystem, take that going into agriculture, the same amount of investment and effort and creativity. Then imagine that in 5, 6 different sectors. I can assure you it's not the same economy that you have today that you will be able to get if that is done. So we all stand to benefit one way or the other. We must standardize and improve the quality of our manufacturing processes. I remember those days when you find anything made in China, the first impression when you say made in China is likely to be fake or not, or a substandard product. Over the years, you don't find that again. It's pride now that you're producing in China. And a friend said, well, everybody goes to China because of cheap labor. I said, yes, let them come to Nigeria also because of cheap labor. What you will find is you live with your product, but you leave them with the processes and the know-how of how to do the good things. So China started with the fake, as you will have it, but now they left with the product, but China is now making the real thing because of the tools that were imported, the processes and the knowledge that they left with them in China. It's the same thing that could happen in Nigeria, and we have to do that. And I clearly also agree that this must be a gradual process. It's not something that will come overnight. What are some of the actions that we can take on our own as my last comment, especially for most of the executives and IT managers in the room today? I said this must be a very deliberate approach. What portion of your investment and IT budget today go to digital localization? I quite agree that there are some things you can't outsource fully, but how deliberate are you today to have some portion of your IT budget to local digitalization? Investment in tech startup. And I hope some of my colleagues will be speaking about that and what CWG is doing in that space. Government also must be deliberate. I can't overemphasize on this. I say these are areas where I think subsidy can work if we're really deliberate about it. And I love the comment from the Minister for Communications some weeks back. And I hope they will do well with most of those conversations. In conclusion, I say technology trade is a driver for economic growth and nation building. It increases our propensity, our real propensity for wealth creation. I call it the springboard, and it could do magic. But before we could get to that level of concentration, before we could get to that level where we can see it as a channel for real development, the private sector must embrace it. The same way we've done in payment, the same way we are seeing in digitalization in the health sector these days. The same must be applicable to different verticals of the economy before we can get the real value that we're talking today. So I hope we will be sharing more of this in the different sessions that we'll be having today. And I hope there will be clear action subsequently from the different stakeholders that are here listening to this. Thank you again for joining us this morning. I do appreciate it. And I wish you an amazing time as we continue with the program.